Something visited your yard last night. Not at dawn. Not at dusk. In the deep middle of the night, between midnight and 4 in the morning, when your house was dark and your yard was quiet and you had no idea anything was happening outside. It moved through your garden in complete silence. It checked the area beneath your hummingbird feeder. It noted the positions of the branches your hummingbird uses to perch. It assessed the approach angles. It cataloged the cover available. It did everything a predator does when it is not hunting yet, but is learning a location for when it is ready to hunt. And it will be back tonight. Your hummingbird knows this. It has known since the first night this visitor appeared. It detected the scent. It heard the movement. It registered the threat at a biological level so fundamental that it changed how your bird behaves, at the feeder, at its roost, in the first minutes of every morning. You have probably noticed something different about your hummingbird lately without being able to name what changed. Tonight, you are going to find out what has been visiting your yard, what it knows about your feeder, what it has been doing while you sleep, and, most importantly, what you can do right now to make your yard safe again. Let us start with who or what has been visiting your yard at night. The list is longer than most people realize, and the animals on it are not the dramatic predators people imagine when they think about bird threats. No hawks circling overhead. No eagles. The animals that threaten your hummingbird at night are quiet, small, and extraordinarily good at operating in darkness, in the specific darkness of a suburban backyard. The first and most dangerous nighttime visitor is the domestic cat. We have covered cat threats in previous videos. The way a cat's presence alone is enough to trigger feeder abandonment in some hummingbirds. The way cats patrol territories regularly and efficiently. But what most people do not realize about cats and hummingbirds is specifically what happens at night. A free-ranging domestic cat in a suburban area does not just pass through yards randomly. It maintains a territory. It patrols that territory on a schedule. And within that territory, it maps every food opportunity, including roosting birds. A ruby-throated hummingbird sleeping in a dense shrub or a tree cavity is a relatively static target. It is in a known location. It is in a state of reduced metabolic function that slows its response time. And it is there every night, because hummingbirds return to the same roost site repeatedly. Research on domestic cat predation of wild birds has documented that cats are most effective as bird predators not when they are actively chasing birds in daylight, where birds can see them and escape, but in the pre-dawn hours when birds are emerging from roost sites before full alertness has returned. The cat knows your feeder. It has been watching the feeder to identify where the birds go when they leave. And it has been mapping the roost sites of the birds that use your yard. The second nighttime visitor is the raccoon. Raccoons are omnivorous and intelligent, two qualities that make them formidable suburban predators. They are primarily nocturnal, most active between 2 and 4 in the morning. And they are extraordinarily good at locating food sources. A hummingbird feeder is interesting to a raccoon for reasons that go beyond the bird itself. The nectar is a direct food source. Raccoons will drain feeders if they can reach them. But more relevant to your hummingbird's safety is that a raccoon investigating your feeder area is creating disturbance, scent, and noise in the space your hummingbird has classified as safe. Research on hummingbird threat response has shown that disturbance of the area around a feeder, even disturbance that happens at night when the bird is not feeding, affects the bird's behavior the following morning. Birds that return to a feeder area that was disturbed overnight show elevated alarm behavior, longer approach hesitation, and in some cases reduced overall feeder visits for days afterward. The raccoon may not catch your hummingbird, but it is damaging the safety architecture of your yard, and your hummingbird can tell. The third nighttime visitor is the one most people never suspect. The eastern screech owl. Screech owls are among the most common nocturnal predators in suburban and rural yards across eastern North America. They are small, roughly the size of a robin, which makes them nearly invisible when perched. They are silent in flight, and they are extraordinarily effective hunters of small roosting birds. A screech owl hunting your yard knows your hummingbird's roost site. It found it the same way it finds all its prey, through systematic nightly coverage of its territory, listening for the sounds of roosting birds, mapping the locations where small birds reliably appear. The screech owl does not need to hunt your hummingbird every night. It simply needs to know where your hummingbird is, and it does. Here is what your hummingbird has been doing about the threat. And it is more sophisticated than most people realize. Ruby-throated hummingbirds are not passive prey animals. They are extraordinarily alert, extraordinarily fast, and equipped with sensory systems that give them significant awareness of nighttime threats even during sleep. We covered this in the Gulf crossing video, the way hummingbirds sleep with one hemisphere of the brain active, one eye open, scanning for threats. That system is not just for migration. It runs every night your hummingbird is roosting in your yard. Your hummingbird has heard the cat. It has registered the raccoon's scent. It has detected the screech owl's soft territorial calls, the descending whinny that screech owls produce throughout the night. And it has been responding. The specific ways your hummingbird responds to nighttime predator presence are subtle but measurable. And if you know what to look for, you may have already been seeing them. Response 1. Roost site shifting. A hummingbird that detects consistent predator presence at its current roost site will begin testing alternative roost locations. If your hummingbird has changed where it disappears to at dusk, if it is no longer going to the same dense shrub or tree it used earlier in the summer, predator pressure on the original site may be why. Response 2. Delayed morning emergence. This is one of the most commonly observed but least understood behavioral changes in hummingbirds under predator pressure. Birds that have detected nighttime predator presence in their territory will sometimes delay their emergence from the roost in the morning, waiting longer than usual before beginning their first feeding bout. Research on songbird anti-predator behavior has documented this extensively. Birds that have experienced predator disturbance near their roost site the previous night show morning emergence delays of up to 45 minutes compared to undisturbed nights. If your hummingbird has been arriving at the feeder later in the morning than it used to, especially if this change was sudden rather than gradual, predator disturbance at the roost site is one of the leading explanations. Response 3. Feeder approach changes. A hummingbird under predator pressure in its yard will alter its approach patterns to the feeder. Instead of flying directly to the feeder on a predictable path, it will approach from different angles. It will make multiple passes before landing. It will perch on approach branches longer than usual, scanning before committing to the feeder. If your hummingbird's behavior at the feeder has become more cautious, more variable, more hesitant, it has information about your yard that you do not have. It has been telling you something is wrong. This is the part that most hummingbird owners find genuinely disturbing. The predator that has been visiting your yard, whether it is a cat, a raccoon, or a screech owl, knows more about your feeder than you might expect. Not in a conscious, strategic way, but through accumulated nightly observation and sensory mapping that is extraordinarily effective. The cat knows the feeder's position. A cat that has been in your yard multiple times has mapped the feeder's location precisely. It knows which direction birds approach from. It knows the branches they use as approach perches. It knows the direction they flush when startled because it has tested them deliberately or accidentally and recorded the response. A predatory cat near a hummingbird feeder is not simply wandering. It is conducting repeated site assessments, building a hunting model of your yard that becomes more detailed and more effective with every visit. The raccoon knows when the feeder is most active. Raccoons are surprisingly good at learning feeding schedules. Research on raccoon foraging behavior in suburban environments has documented that individual raccoons develop precise mental maps of food source locations and the schedules at which those sources are most productive. A raccoon that has visited your yard multiple times has begun to understand the rhythm of your feeder, when birds are most active, when the nectar is freshest, when human presence is lowest. It is not just passing through. It is learning your yard schedule. The screech owl knows where your hummingbird sleeps. This is the most unsettling piece of information in this entire video. And it is the one that has the most direct impact on your hummingbird's safety. A screech owl that has been hunting your yard has almost certainly located your hummingbird's roost site. The owl covers its territory systematically every night. It listens for the specific sounds of roosting birds, the tiny movements, the soft contact calls, the sound of a bird shifting position in its roost cavity or shrub. The owl does not hunt your hummingbird every night. A screech owl's diet is primarily small mammals, mice, voles, shrews, but small roosting birds are taken regularly, and a bird whose roost location is known is far more vulnerable than a bird whose roost is undiscovered. Your hummingbird's roost site, the specific dense shrub or cavity it sleeps in every night, may be known to the screech owl that hunts your yard. And the owl will be back tonight. How do you know if your yard is being visited by nighttime predators? Here are the specific signs to look for, starting tonight. Sign 1. Disturbed ground beneath the feeder. Check the ground directly beneath your hummingbird feeder in the morning before you do anything else. Disturbed leaf litter, small paw prints, displaced mulch or soil. These are the physical traces of a nighttime visitor investigating the feeder area. Raccoon tracks are distinctive, five-toed with a hand-like shape. Cat tracks are smaller, round, with no visible claw marks in soft soil since cats retract their claws. Screech owl evidence is different. Look for pellets under trees near the feeder. Compact oval masses of fur and bone that represent the indigestible portions of the owl's meals, regurgitated near its regular hunting perches. Sign 2. Nectar level changes overnight. Check your feeder nectar level before you go to bed and again in the morning before your hummingbird's first visit. If the level has dropped overnight, especially if it has dropped significantly, a raccoon has found your feeder and is drinking from it. Raccoons are capable of draining a standard hummingbird feeder in a single visit. Sign 3. Your hummingbird's behavior the morning after. Pay attention to how your hummingbird behaves on its first feeder visit each morning. A bird that had an undisturbed night will typically approach the feeder with the confident directness of a bird visiting a familiar safe location. A bird that experienced predator disturbance near its roost the previous night will show elevated caution. Longer approach time, more perch stops before feeding, more scanning behavior during feeding. Your hummingbird's morning behavior is a report on what happened to it overnight. Learn to read it. Sign 4. The screech owl's call. On clear nights, go outside between 10 and midnight and listen. The eastern screech owl's call is unmistakable once you know it. A descending whinny, like a tiny horse, lasting about 2 seconds. If you hear this call consistently from the same direction, particularly from a large tree near your feeder, a screech owl has established a hunting territory that includes your yard. Your hummingbird has already heard this call. Every night, it knows the owl is there. Here is the practical part. What you can actually do starting tonight to reduce predator pressure on your hummingbird. Action 1. Move your feeder. This is the single most effective step you can take. A feeder that has been discovered by a cat or raccoon needs to be relocated. Not to a different part of the same garden. To a genuinely different position, ideally one that is more difficult to approach from ground level and more difficult to reach from climbing routes. A feeder mounted on a smooth pole with a baffle, a dome-shaped guard mounted below the feeder that prevents climbing, removes the most common raccoon access route. A feeder positioned at least 8 feet from any tree, fence, or structure that a cat could use as a launch point for a pounce significantly reduces the ambush risk. Move your feeder. Tonight, if possible. Action 2. Bring the feeder in at night. This is the most direct solution to raccoon feeder raiding, and it has the additional benefit of removing the most detectable scent marker from your yard overnight. A feeder that is brought inside at dusk and put back out at dawn deprives raccoons of their nighttime feeder access. It also removes the overnight nectar fermentation that hot nights accelerate. And it removes the scent trail that tells every raccoon in your neighborhood that your yard is worth visiting. If you cannot bring the feeder inside every night, prioritize the hottest nights of summer when raccoon activity peaks and nectar fermentation is fastest. Action 3. Reduce cat access to your yard. Motion-activated deterrents are the most effective humane option. Motion-activated sprinklers cover ground-level access routes and are triggered by the movement of any animal below a certain size threshold. Cats, raccoons, possums. A single night of being hit with an unexpected sprinkler is enough to significantly reduce most cats' interest in returning to a specific yard. Removing cover that cats use for ambush near your feeder, dense low shrubs within 5 feet of the feeder position, reduces the concealed approach routes that make cats effective ambush predators. Action 4. Accept the screech owl. I want to be honest with you about this one. The screech owl is the threat you cannot remove and should not try to remove. Screech owls are native wildlife, federally protected, and an important part of the ecosystem that includes your yard. What you can do is reduce the owl's knowledge of your hummingbird's roost site. If your hummingbird roosts in a predictable location near your feeder, A dense shrub, an arborvitae hedge, a nest box. Consider adding additional dense vegetation in a different part of the yard. A hummingbird that has multiple roost options will rotate between them unpredictably, making it significantly harder for an owl to reliably locate the roost on any given night. The owl will still be there, but your hummingbird's odds improve significantly when its roost location is not fixed and predictable. Here is what I want you to carry with you after this. The hummingbird that visits your feeder every morning, the one that weighs less than 2 pennies, that crossed 900 miles of open ocean to be in your yard, that chose your specific yard over every other yard on your street, faces threats every single night that you have never seen. While you sleep, your yard transforms. The safe, familiar space that your hummingbird has spent a summer learning and trusting becomes something different, something that requires vigilance, something that a 4-gram bird navigates alone, in the dark, with one eye open and every sensory system alert. And every morning, every single morning that your hummingbird appears at your feeder, it has survived another night of that. Not by luck, by the extraordinary sensory and survival capacity of an animal that has been navigating a world full of predators for millions of years. By the specific anti-predator behaviors that evolution has refined across more generations than we can count. And, in part, by the safety that your yard provides during the hours when it needs it most. The roost site your hummingbird chose is in your yard, not somewhere else. Your yard. That means the nighttime safety of your hummingbird is, in a very real and practical sense, in your hands. The feeder you maintain, the predator access you reduce, the motion-activated sprinkler you install, the baffle you add to the pole, the feeder you bring inside at dusk. Each of these actions is not just yard maintenance. Each one is protection. For a bird that chose your yard, that crosses an ocean to come back to your yard, that carries your yard in its memory through months of Central American winter, that is out there right now in the dark with one eye open, waiting for the morning that will come, and hoping that the yard it chose is still safe when it does. Make sure it is. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever noticed nighttime disturbance around your feeder? Have you heard a screech owl near your yard? And did you know that something might have been visiting while your hummingbird was trying to sleep? I want to hear every single story. I will see you in the next one.